Hello and welcome to another episode of the Awakened Intimacy podcast. Today we have another interview for you. This time it is with the artists formerly known as Damien Bohler and Katie Fields, but now known as Mr. and Mrs. Taelos, which is wonderful. And we're so excited to have these guys on board.
Yeah, it was a really inspiring, deep conversation. And one of the reasons I really wanted to invite them on to the podcast is particularly Damien's writing is really prolific. He writes really in depth around masculine and feminine dynamics and polarity. And I find a real strong resonance with his work. Most importantly, he expands polarity beyond the bedroom because when people first come into this concept around polarity, it's usually only within the domain of sexuality and sexual chemistry, which is really important. Yet polarity has implications far beyond the bedroom and even beyond just relationship. One of the questions I was really curious to ask these guys was, how does polarity actually play an evolutionary role for humanity at this time? We dive deep into that. We explore their relationship because it was really palpable actually during the conversation, and I said it within the podcast, was their love was really palpable. The way they were just looking at each other and smiling at each other. They were more than their words, their embodiment of what they've cultivated in their relationship spoke far beyond just the words that they shared.
I was going to say, and they're both highly intelligent, both highly wise, and you can tell very open-hearted, willing, kind people. So it was a really great conversation.
Yeah, and their brand is called Evolve Relating. They're currently working on their first book, reorganizing the way they deliver their work. So keep an eye on those guys. They're really embodied, very integral. Just can't rate them enough.
Real
It
deal.
was a real honor to have them on, and yeah, we dived into all things conscious relating and why it's actually essential for humanity and humans to work out how to relate with one another, and why doing that within intimate relationship is the foundation.
So without further ado, here's the interview. So welcome to the Awakened Intimacy podcast. We're your hosts.
I'm Aaron.
And I'm Gria. And today we have two very special guests, Damien Bohler and Katie. And it's really lovely to have you both on. And so thank you for creating the space to have this conversation. I'd love to start by hearing a little bit about where you were when you actually came together in terms of your inner journey and your inner commitment to your own self, and whether or not you were actively looking for a relationship or if you happened to stumble upon one another.
You want me to tell my bit?
I
go first. It was interesting. Right before I met Katie, I had become very clear that I was like actually ready for a relationship. I had been in and out of relationships for a long time. It was something that I've always wanted, a deep relationship, but I think that there was a part of me that was never truly ready. And there was something that in me that shifted. I was, at the time, I'd ended a prior relationship and I was in a very short one, and I was in this little bit of a gap, and I felt myself very open. And I was talking with a friend about moving into a share house. We were like in the conversations about like, we were getting together and talking about having a share house and what we would need in a share house and what we would want. And we're kind of in those discussions. And I remember one of the discussions we sat down and I said, yeah, I'm going to have a partner probably at some point pretty early on, since when we start living together, and she's going to be around a lot, and I just have to make sure that you're okay with that. And I hadn't even, I'd met Katie. We never met in person, but we knew, but I didn't, like, it wasn't, there wasn't a strong kind of connection. We'd met online, in different ways. But yeah, so I had this certainty that like it was coming, like, and it felt so clear inside me. And I'd been on a journey of getting more and more refined in what I now describe as my standards around what it is that I actually wanted, and in all the prior relationships, seeing the places where I wasn't in alignment with, like, this is actually what I want, where I compromised in lots of different ways, and how that always came to result in discomfort at some point. The discrepancy between what I wanted and what I was accepting would always eventually become magnified, and that would be very apparent in prior relationships. And I was very aware that I wanted to heal with somebody. I wanted to grow with somebody, have a kind of evolving relationship. I wanted to work through my attachment stuff with somebody, and I wanted somebody who was in alignment with where I wanted to go in my life. And I was really quite clear around where I was heading. And the first time we met, I was just going to a burger store and on my own, and I bumped into a friend there, and I sat down with him, and he was also friends with Katie, and he was meeting Katie at the time. So she turned up, and we had a little chat there, and I found out that at the time Katie was a jeweler, and I had a necklace that I wanted fixed. I didn't think anything more, and I just said, "Hey, can you fix my necklace?" And she was like, "Okay." And then we ended up, it's not actually what you did, but she said, "Okay," anyway. It was actually literally the next day we bumped into each other again at a markets, and then we sat down and we had a chat. And from there, we just started a friendship, and we started connecting and talking and chatting and meeting each other from time to time. And I think it was probably like a month of connecting when I realized, like, we were texting, and the responses that I was getting from Katie when we were texting were these like really deep, thoughtful, kind of intimate responses, like in ways that I didn't know I always experienced. Like there was a level of consideration that had me feel like relaxed, I guess, relaxed and kind of like authentic, like I could be myself. And at the time, like I didn't necessarily equate that with a charge, right? With an erotic charge or something like that. But there was a point about a month in where something in me dropped, and I was like, "Oh, I think I like this person." I was like, "I think I want to start flirting." And I think I did start. You did. I did. I just started flirting. I named it. I just named it in the conversation and started like, flirting. Yeah, and then we started dating. And the first proper date we went to, there was also a time like I was doing an interview for a podcast, and she'd come to meet me before, and we were hanging out, and it was really nice. And I was like, "I have this scheduled podcast that I have to be on, but I'd like to keep hanging out with you." And Katie's like, "I'll go pick up dinner and come back when you're done." And there was just this like easy generosity that that just touched me in a deep way. Like it was just a really deeply easeful flow of like contribution. And and then I think it was the next week after that, we went to a mini festival. There was like workshops and syntropic farming and everything, but we spent the entire time conversing. We didn't go to any workshops or anything. We just got lost in conversation and visioning, and I talked about all my dreams, my desires, and so did Katie, and there was like a lot of resonance. And I started telling Katie about like some of my like intellectual geekery. I talked about integral theory and spiral dynamics, and Katie has encountered a lot of stuff, but that was stuff that was relatively new to you, at least in that language.
Yeah.
And then I stayed over at her night, and the next morning, before I've even opened my eyes, like I'm like still lying in bed with my eyes closed, and Katie starts asking me questions about integral theory. Like first thing in the morning, I haven't even woken up. And I just remember in that moment, I was like, "Oh, I think she's the one." I was like, "Can you, like, I love that you're asking these questions, but I'm not ready yet." Because I sleep in. I'm like I take a good hour from the time of waking up to like being ready for the day. I need like, it's a slow journey for me. Whereas Katie wakes up with like questions in her mind and musings about the world and everything, and she's like active from the moment of waking, and I'm like, I'm not ready for that. But there was that just that was so alive for you, that it had gone in and you're like, I want to know more. And I was just like, yeah, I feel really met here. And that was it. That was the start of our relationship.
Yeah.
You know, and then we just continued from there.
Yeah.
What about you?
I feel like that was from beginning to
That was my story.
yeah, your story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's always like I've been on my personal journey, I feel like, from a very young age, but relationship was always something that felt maybe like even counter to my attachment style, but felt like it had a huge part to play in my purpose. Like I was like, there's something about my purpose here. And then it kind of moved counter to being kind of avoidant, that there was this dance that I was having to navigate as I was growing into myself. And yeah, in my 20s, I met my first son's father, and that relationship really had me, I guess, develop the standards. Like I left that relationship with a deep sense of what I wanted moving forward, like what it would look like for me moving forward. And there was a settled, I would say, like a timeless, like, it's okay if it's not this life kind of thing. It was like a deep, it wasn't like entitlement or anything, but there was like, no, there's a certain frequency and a currency and a resonance that's the correct. And I'm okay if I don't find this life, but that's where I'm heading and that's what's pulling me. Like it was like my soul was pulling me towards this. And I would say, previous to meeting Damien, I don't know necessarily that I was like ready for a relationship, but there was lots of aspects of my life that were disintegrating around this kind of self-sufficiency. There was this point, this peak that I'd reached of like, like this peak of loneliness. Like, okay, I've achieved these pieces that feel important to me in my own journey, and there's actually not any further I can go on my own. And then there was this surrender in me around those pieces of just like allowing that to let go. And there were big pieces that felt part of my identity and part of like, you know, kind of being a single mom and having my own business and kind of being on purpose. But it felt like there was this, there's a disintegration. And so I think that process began, even if not fully conscious, maybe a few months before I met Damien. And then, as Damien shared, we met at this burger shop, but I'd actually gone for a healing with a friend that day before. And he was like, and it was the first session I'd ever had with him. And it was amazing. It was beautiful. And then he was like, something really key is going to happen to you today. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I went to meet my friends and I met Damien. And I didn't even like click. And then I went for a walk with our friend on the beach, and I found this seashell that was this like, you know, like it was still together. It was open. And I was like, oh my God, that's it. That was the thing. And
your special thing was a seashell.
I went over this thing. It was like, oh yeah, this is the gift that was coming to me. When really the gift was like that first connection. And and then we met the next day. And on reflection, I think you have these, like, it's happening in the unconscious. But I remember that next day we're speaking about a lot of stuff, a lot of human design things. But I remember you mentioning that you had negative blood type.
Yeah.
And there was this, because I do as well. And there was this thing inside of me that was like, ding, oh, that's someone that I could have a baby with. And it's like just off there, far, far away. And because I was not, I felt like I was complete having children, but there was some kind of voice somewhere. And there's just like little pieces that like over time, you know, like on reflection, I'm like, oh yeah, that was.
And I was also just remembering, we didn't tell the story of like earlier, like probably a good 8-10 months earlier when we're at Taste of Love and I taught the workshop that you're in, and you'd messaged me. Yeah. We came back to that later. You'd messaged me this really beautiful message and saying, you're the kind of man I'd like to be with. Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't even clock that this was...
Well, and because it wasn't coming from because he was going to Costa Rica and like out of the country and gone. So it felt like quite a safe. It was more like an admiration of like that, what you're embodying is really like, And so, that was, and also that we had also connected, like you had written a post about depth.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's so beautiful. And you had written, so we'd had a couple of interactions. You'd written to me. That was like maybe a year before or something.
Yeah.
And you'd written in response to that. So there was a few things in your party. And anyway, there was a few like little like touch points, but it wasn't really until,
It's interesting that the thing that you said as well, I'd gotten to that point as well. I felt like I'm going to meet someone, but also prior to that was this similar acceptance of like, I know what I want and I'm not willing to settle. And if that means I die alone, that's fine. Like I get peace with that, I'm not compromising these things again. And I'll be okay. If that means living the rest of my life alone, so be it.
And I think that brought a quality of like leaned back to the connection in the beginning. Like there was something of, and maybe also set the foundations for generosity as like a base. Like I think something that I value about our coming together in the beginning was like there was a wholeness, and it was like, what can I offer rather what can I get? I feel like set the anyway.
Long intro.
That's awesome.
That was beautiful.
It's so nice, yeah.
And there's actually lots of like little threads of resonance with some of our story as well, of how we came together. And our relationship started as a friendship, and that shared passion for mutual growth and personal development, and that really formed the foundation of our intimacy. Because we were just friends, we had no expectation of one another.
No need.
Yeah.
But I also had the thought I could have his baby. He's like, I feel like I could have his baby. And also I wake up ready to go as well. Like,
and I'm a slow riser.
Yeah.
Yeah. Straight into dream recall. I'm like, yeah, tell me.
Can you give me another 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much. And I think the other part I find resonance in is like that kind of declaration of like, this is what I want and I'm not willing to settle. And I think for me, before we came together, even when we were friends, I'd had kind of a breakdown before a breakthrough, like just my heart breaking open, just this deep longing to be in relationship. I'd been single for 8 years and been solo journeying, and had all these amazing heroes journeys and initiations, and every night when I'd go to bed I'd still be wishing that I had someone next to me to live life with. And yes, there was layers of attachment wounding and abandonment wounding and neediness of the feminine. There was layers of that, but deeper than that, there was, like you said, Katie, there was this deep knowing that relationship was something I was here for. And I wasn't going to settle for anything other than like that deep soulmate connection. So there was a real resonance there as well.
Yeah, I love that you spoke to the unwillingness to compromise. I'm really not a fan of compromises. I think in compromises, no one wins, right? Everyone just settles for something they don't want, and that nuance between devotion and non-attachment. I'm devoted to this, and I hand it over as to whether it happens. So it's really beautiful to hear that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. And obviously, as you guys know, there's stages of relationship, and that first romantic fairy tale stage is full of synchronicity and amazement and curiosity.
Open shells.
And then the kind of reality hits, and we move into that second phase of where we realize we're in relationship with another human being who is perfectly imperfect. So I'm curious for you guys, like what challenges have you had to move through to be able to be together? And I just also have to say, like, sitting here and witnessing you guys, the love between you both is very palpable. I noticed it yesterday in our connection call, but just sitting here and watching you guys, it's very palpable. And I know that a love like that is forged through adversity and honesty and depth. And so vulnerability, really curious, what has your journey been to get to that point?
Yeah. I like just on the note, the phases, I really like thinking of them in seasons. It's kind of how the name that I quite enjoy. It's like spring is when we meet. It's like the first blossoms and you have these little tender, like, oh wow, like these little love feelings. And then you enter into summer and you're like, let's get all our clothes off as much as possible. And it's hot, you know, and it's adventurous and it's out there. And then you go into a kind of an autumn and you go, hang on a second, like
we're dropping in.
We're dropping in, the leaves are falling, there's like reality is kind of coming upon us. And then you hit winter, and winter is like, oh shit, it's cold. And like, are we prepared for like the hardship and the snow and the like
tending to
the fire and like things get gritty, you know, and we kind of have to go through that. And I really think that winter is a stage that all relationships hit, you know. It's like, you know, and often it's those early months that are like preparing us for that, but that still doesn't like change the fact that like hard weather is coming, you know, and it's part of the journey. So yeah, we've absolutely been through our difficulties there. You know, we entered in with a lot of awareness around our attachment, and like we spoke of that early on and we saw those patterns, but you know, and we had some awareness of them. And then it also doesn't negate the fact that like when they really start to come alive, it's like, you know, old stuff comes up and all of these really bizarre reactive and defensive protective tendencies occur. And so it's like,
I'm just recalling like in the beginning of our relationship, I remember when we moved up to the Sunshine Coast.
Yeah.
And I had 2 specific times where I felt like I was going to die.
Yeah.
I was being met with my avoidant, like there was pieces and there was like a later move through. And it's like so visceral that I was like, oh gosh, like it was only that the structure had been, that I'd landed the structure so deeply in my awareness that I could like go and grab it, because the actual felt sense of my nervous system was like in overdrive. And there was a few experiences like that.
Yeah.
Early on.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. I would say the other thing that I feel like is a big challenge for us is like, and probably showed up from the beginning, was our orientation to how to heal. Like, I feel like I came in with more of a like soul initiation, like
mutation,
we're just
go through the fire,
you know. And then Damien was like slow and steady,
incremental, do like one bit at a time, and like
yeah. And I feel like, but what that taught me was like, actually, I was kind of like blasting my human into kind of a bit of a freeze state and not really giving it the love that it needed. And so, you know, that process and learning and giving, even offering that to myself and my own humanness, that's like this more slow, tender, like, let's like gently be with it and do it over time. It's like, it opened my heart, my human heart, in a way that like I hadn't given it, I guess, through my journey. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that challenges or struggles in relationship usually come down to like the places where we're different, you know, and it's like part of what draws us together is where we're same. We have the same visions, the same kind of like ideas about the future. So we're drawn together by these similarities, you know, like the things that we enjoy and that feeling of closeness. But we're also drawn together by our polarity, by like the differences between us as masculine and feminine beings, and being in those states relative to each other. But then there's this like third layer of differences where the challenges show up, you know, like the differences in how we approach our healing or our growth, the differences in orientation. I'm very pragmatic. I like to look at things from the bottom and how does it work at the most mechanical kind of structural level at the bottom. And Katie tends to look from the top. You know, we understand this through human design and gene keys, because we've looked at maps to understand these differences.
We can't possibly be more different.
Yeah, our profiles have these real distinct differences from each other, and
it's
and
like,
they're real.
No,
yeah,
no, not that.
They're real, but then there's also a complement to them. So, you know, like, yeah, Katie has a overview, top down kind of look at things. It cares more about the destination and the kind of like, what would you say that is?
I would say more like looking at the bigger picture, like the whole thing from the top and the workings that way. Whereas I feel like I'm
like, yeah, look, I understand where we're going, but we've got to look at it from down here. We've got to do this like micro adjustment down here to get there. And Katie's like, I'm like, we just got to be up here, frequency.
Yeah, but it's been huge because then it like brings these two pieces together that don't, it's like, I often think about the tree, like you're looking at the tree. There's actually a Buddhist story that I tell the kid, that I read to the kids about like these 4 sisters that go to look at this special tree on their birthday and they're going to see it at a different season. So it has a different, the Shimshuk tree, I'm saying it wrong. But so they're like, no, that's not what it looks like. It looks like this. It's these beautiful, red, ruby, delicious, juicy, like jewels. And they're like, no, it's like this white, like crystalline, because the different seasons are offering.
Yeah.
I feel like there's something like about getting a perception that's brings the two pieces together in a way that,
and it seems to me like meeting those challenges is about both accepting, recognizing, and harmonizing those differences. Similarly, like how we do conflict or how we react to conflict is quite different. Katie is fiery and I are going to freeze and curl up into my shell, and those two things are at odds with each other. And the bizarre thing is, and this is where I think a lot of couples struggle as well, is like, to me, going quiet and pulling in is harmless. It's benign. But to her nervous system, that's terrifying, right? The withdrawal and the closing in feels like abandonment, right? And her getting...
I'm like, we got fire. Let's like alchemize.
To me, it's like too much. And I'm like, I need to run away, And it's like, my way is the right way. No, my way is the right way. And it's actually like, oh, these are our differences again, And so it's like, how do we both recognize, acknowledge, harmonize and celebrate them? And to me, that's really the journey of finding all of those pieces and finding peace between us around them, and then, owning out the dysfunctional, wounded parts, meeting them. A lot of the reactive patterns are simply a need that hasn't known that it can be met yet. Trying to peel through the defense to the vulnerability and actually meet that need. And when we do, there's a dropping away, and that bit falls away. And then it's like, okay, what's the next layer? So,
it's beautiful. And what you're describing is something that we're actually going to be teaching on in a few days, a masterclass on divine union. And the core premise is, that which creates conflict and disconnect in our relationship, when worked through and consciously integrated, actually brings us both into a state of wholeness within. And we actually had something similar earlier today where I got fiery, Greer got into her, I don't want to say it, but mopey.
Yeah, he uses the M word. He calls me mopey. I'm like, I'm not being mopey.
I get Eeyore.
Eeyore, yeah. Well,
I get mopey.
My innocence is like, why would you hurt me? I'm just going to go over here.
Well, you even said it was like disappointed, and I'm like, oh, well, no wonder I'm feeling shame.
Yeah. It's that good example of the complementary opposites, and how Aaron's, I'm requiring Aaron to soften and he's requiring me to strengthen. This is how we come to that, alchemy. And, we because it's this pattern and it's because we're teaching on it in a couple of days' time. I don't know if if the same thing happens for you, but we find if we teach on a particular topic or retreat,
you'll put through the fire. You better be clear.
The moment we go, right, we're going to do a course or a teaching on this, it's here, right here. And it's like the universe going, do you have this? Are you sure you got this? And it's like, you have to work out any of the little kinks that aren't embodying that okay.
100%. So that's where we've been the last few days. And so just like literally about 2 hours ago, I was like, all right, well, babe, this is okay. How are we going to work this out? Let's actually just look at this. And it's that concept of naming that, Aaron's not my enemy. I'm not his enemy. It's the pattern. And so just even naming that pattern just kind of puts it outside, and and almost that what was the word that we decided to say?
We just pattern as a code word, a circuit breaker, because like I was saying to Greer, there's no gap for me to be able to control that fire at times. It just happens. There's no capacity to regulate and to take a breath. It's just stimulus response, bang.
And it's relatively harmless. You've softened it.
Yeah, I've softened it a lot. Yeah. But it still hurt. It still can hurt grit.
Yeah.
And so the circuit breaker is just to say pattern, because as soon as she withdraws, I then start getting, it's me versus you, and like, well, why are you getting to, like, anyway, there's a whole story there we don't need to go into. The point we came to was recognizing how helpful it is to remind each other that the pattern is the issue. The pattern is the enemy and not each other.
And even the pattern needs love.
Yeah,
you know,
ultimately.
it's just, so yes. So we have become next level mastery of our divine union in this last little while. And it's a continual practice, isn't it? And I'm not sure about you guys, but we feel that, you know, just as that, if we often use the Merkaba, and as we're getting those different perspectives and we're expanding that, as our capacity to hold broadens, we're required to hold more things. And because we're even more is coming up from the unconscious that we hadn't heard. So that vulnerability, but the safety is getting stronger and stronger. So it makes this beautiful, you know, flow of expansion and deepening, and it's gorgeous. So it's really so beautiful to hear that journey within you both.
Yeah. And obviously your brand is called Evolve Relating. And so I've heard you mention, Damien, and Greer knows that I totally geek out over spiral dynamics and integral theory. I've been pulling her along on the journey.
Now I've started going big purple. Turns him on when I start talking colour.
Language,
yeah. And so what I wanted to hear from you guys is, like, so relationship, it obviously plays a role in our evolution. So what role does relating play in helping us individually and collectively evolve?
I mean, I'm just thinking about how, like, where I want to go. It's like different directions I could go. I think about, I want to use the word hold-ons, but then I'm like, I'm going to have to describe what a hold-on means. So I think about, like, I know I'm thinking about the audience as well. The way that our world is constructed by, like, increasingly nested groups, right? There are groupings. And I think that, you know, there's the individual, right? We have our sense of self as an individual, but then the first actual grouping of humans is the relationship, the couple, right? Because without a relationship between a man and a woman, biologically, there's no family. So there's no, the entire social construction of humanity doesn't exist without that first grouping. You go from the individual to the couple to the family, and then you get groupings of families together. You have a tribe. You get groups of tribes together. You have a village. You get, you know, villages together. You have a nation. You know, you kind of have this continually larger clumps of humans. But if we go back to the first social unit, it's the couple, because there's an individual unit, but the first social unit is the couple. And so I think that, like, there's such a big leverage point there. In my own work, like, my actual background is as environmental biology. That's what I studied at university. I then later went into learning about permaculture, and I had a lot of passion around, like, how do we live a more ecological life as humans? Because when I learned at university, I was like, oh my God, we are just destroying the planet. You know, like, there is this big problem occurring environmentally. But at some point, after spending a lot of time on communities, you know, permaculture communities and different things, I realized that until people deeply care about each other, there's no chance for us to actually change the world, right? And then as I dug even deeper with that, I realized it's actually like the couple is probably the biggest source of human to human pain on the planet, is the difficulty in forming relational units. If we look at popular music, for example, if we were to go and look at the top 100 chart, I would wager that more than 50%, probably even 60 or 70% of that are about dysfunctional relationships, heartbreak, problems. That's the milieu that we're in. If we look at TV shows, if we were to go do a scan through on Netflix, again, probably more than 50% of them centered around relationship drama, and then probably another 40% of them have at least one central dramatic relationship at the core of the story being told, right? And we're obsessed by relationship, right? You know, as a species, and rightly so, because that's how we perpetuate our species, is through relationship, forming children. Whether anyone chooses to have children or not, it's still that impulse is to come together in that sense. And so for me, I think that if we've had 30, 40, 50 years of the personal development revolution, we've got this multi-billion-dollar personal development kind of machine in place, but we don't have the relational development movement yet. You know, it's starting, and personal development is not relational development. Like you can do a lot of personal development and still get into a relationship, and if anything, actually a lot of personal development hinders relationship. Like if you are a more simple, and simple I don't mean dumb, I just mean less complex in terms of the level of self-awareness that you've developed, relationship is a bit easier because you don't have as much complexity to deal with. But if you've done a lot of personal development work and you get together with someone who's done a lot of personal development work, you're now two quite complex beings trying to fit your life together. And there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong in that, right? There's a lot of potential for challenge. And so I think that, you know, like given that kind of rising of units of couples to tribes, that's how we're going to influence the nature of the world. It's like, what is the new tribe, right? The new tribe is going to change the way that we live close to the land. But without the couple, the new tribe is a mess. And I've been to communities where they don't have a strong sense of the couple as a pillar, or open relating, and it's just a dramatic mess. It's just a mess of interpersonal relationships damaging each other, and it's really hard to get traction there. So I think for me that recognizing that there's a really big leverage point for creating change in the planet by focusing on relationship. And you have stuff to add, your visions of the couples as the pillars.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we live in a relational world. So it's like that is ultimately where we turn. And it feels like getting that template right for how to relate becomes like the seed of the fractal that makes everything else easy. You know, so it, as you said, it's the leverage point. And I also just think that there's the capacity, like, you know, like self-sourcing is one thing, but, you know, when two people come together, we get the alchemical third. So we're like developing this capacity to generate energy in a way that you can't do on your own. And I feel like there's something in that. And once we actually
unlock it.
Yeah, in like a very conscious kind of codified way, then that again also spreads, you know, the fractal, and we start to become kind of the luminous beings we're meant to be.
That was a point that I was going to say in relation to what you just said that I really liked. I've lost it.
Around generosity, maybe?
No, it was around the couple or the that's it. Right. So we've had this personal development movement and we've developed individually, but the template, like you're talking about there for a relationship, isn't there yet. It's like the possibility of the relationship is lagging behind where individuals have gone, right? And until that catches up and it gains the weight, we're missing all of this energy that is developed inside of a relationship. Like I spoke about with the media and the songs, the amount of energy that is leaked out of dysfunctional or painful relationship experiences, it's like wasted energy, you know? And it's like, you know, and I know, and all couples know that if you have a big conflict, you can waste a day or more. And if you're in a relationship with a lot of conflict, you can waste weeks and months out of a year of just operating subpar. Like we're operating lower than we're actually capable of because of the amount of energy that it burns to not be in a flow, in a generative, energetic container together. But then on the other hand, when we come into flow together and we're actually working together and things work, it's like we have more energy than we can do on our own. And that energy that is the energy that starts to move mountains, right? And then if we get more couples together, we start to create that tribe. Now we really start to move things with that energy that's created between us.
In alignment with kind of love. Like I think when a couple devotes to love, like puts love at the center, it starts to become like it is a transmission of that love, you know, and then that becomes what ripples out. And so then in service, it doesn't necessarily mean like a couple has to be out there doing all the things, although I feel like that's part of the way that's being paved, like the trail is being blazed, but it's like eventually couples will just be doing their coupling, and that love is going to be transforming humanity, just being there. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, it reminds me too, you know, around the ecological consciousness. I really see the West making a shift from, you know, to use spiral language, from orange to green, or from, you know, capitalistic individualism into a more relational, ecological consciousness. And yeah, we see people having a yearning for tribe and being more community based, and yet lacking the relational skills. And why so many of those communities tend to collapse is there's a lack of emphasis or awareness on what it takes to be really relational.
Yeah, and that they are skills, you know, it's that there is that, as you said, there is the nitty gritty. Okay, so what do we do here? Okay, what we do is we name the pattern. That's our process. But also remember, okay, what's that higher perspective? And I said to Aaron just before, with this, you know, this pattern and this ball of energy that is the relationship that has just like the yin yang, all of this light and then this shadow. And I said it makes sense that as our relationship grows and we continue to evolve, there's going to be parts of that also require, you know, more love, more awareness, more light, so that can, and how do we be with the shadow of that pattern? You know, can we still bring love to it and that beautiful alchemy that provides? So
yeah, and we will confirm that there is a lot of energy generated in a loving relationship. It's very juicy and it's enlivening, it's vitality, it's life force, right? And it lights us up and gives us the will, the passion, the determination, the resilience to be able to raise a family in a conscious way, to be able to deal with the economic pressures that we're under. So having that support, that nourishment as the relationship is the foundation for our life is really essential for us to continue as a species. So yeah, really resonate with what you shared there. And you know, something that one of my teachers, Terry Real, was very big on was, you know, moving out of patriarchy and really seeing patriarchy as an imbalance in our psyche and consciousness. And it's not something to blame men for. You know, a woman can embody patriarchy as much as a man, and that's not to diminish the suffering that women have endured. That is a reality as well. But yet with both genders, both men and women, have suffered under the influence of patriarchy. And so we believe the remedy of coming out of that paradigm and that consciousness is to be in more balance within our own masculine and feminine qualities. And so, you know, there's a role of polarity there. And, you know, Damien, I see you often write very eloquently and clearly from a very embodied place around masculine and feminine energies. And so I'm also curious, what role do you see polarity playing in our evolution? And why is it important for a couple to have this understanding? Because one of the limitations that I see is, you know, the entry level into polarity teachings is usually around sexuality, but it's often so much more than that.
The thing is, it's like polarity is a new kind of buzzword, perhaps in relational circles. Obviously, it stems from tantric kind of philosophy, and so it's been around forever because it's inherent. It's one of the innate mechanisms of how one, the universe works. The entire dualistic universe as we experience runs on polarity. There is no temperature without the polarity between hot and cold. There is no location without the polarity between up and down and left and right. Everything that we know is created in the space between two opposing poles. So there's a functional principle of polarity that runs through everything, and it runs through relationship also. And every relationship, romantic relationship, runs on polarity. You don't feel romantic and sexual attraction, romantic love and sexual attraction for another person without polarity. That is what it is, the polarity that creates that experience that we know as romantic love and sexual chemistry. What I think is going on is that, I mean, this is not what I think, this is a central thesis in our body of work, is that a lot of relationships are formed on a wounded type of polarity, which is basically at this particular stage of our human development, the relationship between anxious and avoidant attachment is a polarity, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a particularly intense or volatile polarity, meaning there's a lot of energy between the anxious and the avoidant. They have a very strong charge between them. So what happens is an anxious person meets an avoidant person, they feel this strong charge. If you've got a little bit of physical attraction in there and some shared interests, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, mind blown, we are absolutely irrevocably attracted to each other. But it's our wound, huh? Twin flame, soulmates, whatever it might be. But it's actually the wounded pattern. The polarity is created by the wound. We call it dirty fuel. It's running on this dirty fuel of a wound, a wounded polarity. And it runs really hot at the beginning. Like that kind of relationship, and I've certainly been there, and I know you've been there, and most people listening have probably had some version of one of those kinds of relationships that's running on that. It runs very hot at the beginning, and then it starts to burn. It gets very painful, right? Because those wounds come to surface, and then you realize there's a cycle that the romantic and sexual feelings are only generated through the pain of that wound playing out. So we get in this cycle of needing pain in order to generate attraction. Mm-hmm. So developing a conscious polarity, which is a shift into a masculine, feminine expression towards each other from an intentional place, requires one, smoothing that out so we're not running on that polarity anymore. We're not playing out this anxious avoidant dance. We're doing something else. And then we then can start to live masculine and feminine qualities in relation to each other to create that energy. And now the create part is really important because it's a conscious creation. We polarize to generate that feeling, right? But we don't. And what I think is really important, again, with spiral dynamics kind of conversation, when we're going into a more integrated state, right? We're in a particular cultural trajectory where we've got what I call the great polarity flip going on, where women who went first, women generally evolve a little bit ahead of men in terms of our human timeline. And there's a reason for that, because their womb holds the evolutionary potential of humanity. And so they evolve first and men kind of like match that. A polarity flip where a lot of women started to become more masculine, and then rightfully so, because there was a feminine uprising, women's liberation, realizing that like, hey, hang on, we don't want to live our lives dependent on the masculine, dependent on men anymore. And so in that process of the polarity flip, women start to get in contact with their inner masculine. And then on the other side, a little bit lag behind, we're seeing more and more of it now, men who start flipping into their feminine, and they start becoming more in contact with their emotional body and their soft and sensitive self, and become more interested in sensuous experience than drive or purpose or achievement, right? In touch with their feminine, become a little bit listless in terms of their purpose. And in all of that mess, we have this strange thing, and then we have our attachments going on. But what happens as a result of that process, women exploring their masculine, men exploring their feminine, unconsciously, it just happens. It's a developmental process. So it just happens one day, usually incrementally. Someone wakes up and they're like, I really want to feel as a man, or a woman wakes up and goes like, I really want to focus on my purpose, right? And it just becomes part of this journey. When we start to integrate, when we reach the end of that journey, as a man, I've kind of explored my feminine world and I've gone, cool, I got this. And a woman, I've explored my masculine world, I've got this. We reach this tipping point where we enter into an integrated state of being, and we start to break free of the identity associated with gender, right? And I think that this is why it's such a big political thing right now, gender politics, because at an unconscious collective, we're trying to break out of the attachment to identity. It's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily mean changing my gender. It just means freeing myself from the identity associated with it. And so when we rise up out of that, we get liberated from the idea that I have to be a particular way in order to have masculine energy, or I have to be a particular way to have feminine energy. We realize that these are states. And as states, I can embody a particular state with Katie, and she can embody a particular state with me. And the moment we go into that state, we generate energy. So for us, polarity is this conscious practice of understanding states that are separate from the uniqueness that I am. I get to be uniquely Damien in all of the ways that I am. I don't have to construct myself as like, this is what a man should be, and I have to live like that. I can be me, and I can use masculine quality states to generate energy in relationship with Katie. If I go into a state of presence with her, her body's going to respond, and we'll feel charge between us. I don't have to identify as something to do that. I can enact it. Any thoughts?
No, just sitting, feeling to like, this is part of our mechanics too, like it's inherent. It's just really functioning from our innate mechanics.
And these polarized states, they're inherent to us. We have access to them. The only shift is we start to do it consciously. We start to, we move out of running unconscious polarities, which is these wounded dynamics, into conscious expressions where we do it with intention and we know what we're doing. And with that, the energy, the love, the turn on, the generosity, all of that gets co-created. It gets generated by the way that we relate to each other.
Yeah. I love that. And I've got a question, because we're on your email list, Damien. And so the piece came through today or yesterday, and it was talking about how men want to feel, trusted and safe and present and desired. And for the woman, it's feeling cherished. And so I can totally, like, one of the reasons why I love Aaron so much is because I can trust him, like, because of everything that he shared with me. And because the trust that he's bestowed in me in sharing, and revealing himself. And so he has earned my trust, and that makes me desire him. And then when you're kind of, bringing that energy to me, and I can feel that, that cherishing energy, that is so sweet for me. And so, yes, we've got the masculine and feminine, and yet do you still feel that there are, on the whole, basic tendencies of, and again, it's a bit tricky politically these days, but, of man and woman, because I feel that, but that's just my experience, and.
Well, so the moment I start writing a piece like that, a polarized piece, the automatic response, there's always going to be one. I write it and I sit there and I'm like, I know exactly what kind of comments are coming. One of the comments that's always going to come is, yeah, but women want to be trusted too. Yeah, but women want to be respected too. And I'm like, yeah, we all do. But what I would venture is the masculine in us wants to be respected, trusted, admired. The feminine in us wants to be cherished and adored and felt and seen, right? And so, yeah, I have all of it. I like to be cherished and adored as well, but they don't feed my masculine. And because I'm in a male body, while I might not have to identify with the construct of a man, I am in a male body. My body runs on a system that is based around testosterone. And I think testosterone is the biological element of masculine essence, whereas estrogen and progesterone, of course, women need two, not just one. Of course, estrogen and progesterone are the essences of feminine energy, right? And so those qualities feed my masculine, right? And my masculine is the thing that's going to turn towards Katie and have her feel feminine. And the polarization between masculine and feminine generates the energy between us. She can absolutely cherish and adore me, and I can respect and trust her, but we're gonna change the polarity dynamics, which is fine. And that might be something that some couples want. Some couples, the man might be like, I want to be in more of the feminine pole, and the woman might want to be, I want to be more in the masculine pole. And there may be times in a relationship where that's necessary. And that doesn't mean that Katie doesn't value being respected and trust and admired. She absolutely does, but it doesn't feed her in the same way as being cherished and adored does, right? Even I say cherish and adored and your face softens, right? I say I respect you and I trust you. Your spine kind of straightens, like, hey, right? And it's just like, and so recognizing, again, coming into that place where we see polarity as a set of states that we enact together, it's like, what do we want to co-create? That's it. So if I want to co-create, if I want to see her soft and like flowing and sensuous, if that's what I love, I feed her with cherishment and adoration, you know. If she wants to see me like purposeful and directed and everything, she feeds me with trust and respect, and I respond in that way, right? What do we want out of each other? And we can do all of it. We have choice. So the point is not to say that this is the correct way, even though, you know, a social media post is a snippet of a bigger, you know, story, and it's never going to tell the whole thing. And that's one of the challenges, but it's also how it works. You have to be a little bit polarizing and say things in really strong, absolute, authoritative statements to get any traction in social media. That's just, if I explain all the nuances, people just scroll on by, right? Like that's just how it works, unfortunately. So it's not to say that's how it has to be, but it's like, I would say that's what most beings in male bodies and most beings in female bodies want to experience, because that's how the body's designed. Doesn't mean they have to, but they most want
biological...
to. Yeah. It's like, why not? It's like, there's like, you know, there's no point trying to, I love watching basketball, right? And in basketball, you know, the most of them are Black athletes because they're innately more athletic. Right? They innately jump higher, they're innately taller, they innately have those skills. And that's not me, right? If I were to play basketball, I have to play a completely different game based on the way that my body is. That's okay, you know? Doesn't make me less than or anything. It just means that's the body that I'm in. Yeah. Don't know if that point was necessary, but maybe it's...
You really like basketball.
Maybe I just wanted an opportunity to talk about basketball.
My daughters will be pleased. So, and as you said, it's I guess the key of what you're saying is that if you want the polarity, you need the two difference. And so if I think of two people who have that trust and respect, I think of a brotherhood. And if I think of two people who are in that cherishing, oh, you look so beautiful, that's like a sisterhood. And so I guess that's the whole point. If you want the polarity, you just need the two poles. And in healthy polarity, what we find, if like we will have that natural tendency, particularly sexually, I am naturally more passive and you're more like that. Leading, but if we always do that, that's boring. So we still need to mix that up, and then that creates more, you know. So I guess it's just that it's everything's the dance, right? Everything's the movement.
And the main thing is, are we conscious of what we're doing, and are we conscious of what we're choosing? Is it intentional or is it just happening? Right? I think that's the main point. And even that's confronting to some people, because I think a lot of people, like, they want love and attraction to happen spontaneously without any effort. And I'm like, it does in the honeymoon period, when you have biology on your side pumping hormones through your system like you're high, right? When you're drugged by new relationship energy, it is spontaneous, but that's going to wear off. It always does. And a lot of people go, it's worn off. I'll go find it somewhere else and get the high again. But if you want a long-term sustainable relationship, you can't, like, the body's going to stop doing that. Once you reach the attachment point, the body stops putting all of the hormones through which are designed to get you to bond. They're designed to make you inseparable. Right? That's what all those hormones are do, to go, right, we're now together and it's going to really suck if we break up. That's what those, and once you've hit that point of like, we're now together, the hormones stop, right? All the neurotransmitters change and now you have to do something else. And so there is a truth, there is a reality to, if we want to have a long-term relationship that is still sexually vital and filled with romantic love, we have to learn how to generate it ourselves intentionally. Or we can rely on the fight and fuck cycle, right? But there's only so long you can do that before you're destroyed, and you no longer, just like a heroin addict, you no longer get the same rush anymore. The rush starts to become bland in and of itself, and all you are left with is the devastation happening to your body or your relationship.
Yeah, that's exactly why I stopped heroin.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, this has been a really beautiful conversation and touched on a lot of really valuable points. And just as we wrap this up, I'm really curious what's next for you guys as a couple and personally, professionally. How are you guys evolving?
You have any first thoughts?
You can take that one away.
Professionally, we're working on our first book, and we are putting this entire body of work, which is really comprehensive, into one foundational course. So we've explored a couple of different ways of trying to present the entire body of work with challenges, because it's a lot. And so we're putting it into one self-guided journey that gives the entire framework of all of this, because we just shared a piece of the transition. But to make that transition from running on the dirty fuel to conscious fuel, there's a lot of different things that need to happen, right? We have to heal and smooth out the attachment. We have to learn to regulate our nervous system. We have to learn better communication patterns. Then we have to learn to consciously apply the polarity. We have to learn all these skills, like you mentioned before. They're skills. So we're putting that all together into one place. And we're here in Ahmed in Bali, in this just gorgeous house, a house that we wake up in every day going, oh my God, we live here, this is so good, with the views of the ocean. So we're here for a number of months working on that. That's what we're building. Filming and writing and then we want to do a bit of travel, and we want to go and explore other communities, because the next step is community, right? Like we said, we're working with the first leverage point of the couple, but this is not where the work ends. We're interested in what is the tribe 2.0? What is the collective of humans that is going to break free of whatever's happening in the world right now? Because I'm not going to go down this tangent. I'm just going to say the one thing, but we're on a fast track to the dissolution of governments and nation states. I believe we're going to see corporate states in our lifetime. You're going to live in Google Sydney, or Facebook Melbourne, right? We're heading there. The power is shifting away from governments into corporations, right? That's where it's going with AI and everything. We're going to be in a different world. So how are we going to meet that world and retain those of us? One more tangent. Sorry. I believe we're approaching a species bifurcation, right? This has happened throughout evolution. A species split into multiple subspecies when new niches open up in the environment. We're seeing new niches. AI, virtual reality, people will start traveling into space. We're seeing these different niches that are starting to show up. And I think we're going to start splitting into different forms of humanity, right? Right now we're Homo sapiens sapiens, but we might be Homo luminous and Homo nanotech and Homo, we're going to have different Homo gene edited, right? We're going to have different expressions of human. So it's how do we put our stake in the ground for the type of humanity that we want to see in the future? So we're going to go on the road and explore other communities and then hopefully start
see what's working,
and then see what we can put on the ground ourselves.
Amazing.
And anything else?
No.
Just to keep deepening together.
Yeah.
Have more kids.
Yeah. More kids.
More kids. Lots more kids.
And like the word that keeps coming is elegance. I feel like with the business and with everything, I feel like there's a drawing into more grace, like a kind of,
Yeah, absolutely.
into that.
Yeah, and more kids.
More kids.
So beautiful.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Katie. Thank you, Damien. Such an honour. We'll put all of your socials and contact details in the show notes.
Yeah, thanks so much for your time and energy and presence, guys. It's been a real gift.
Thanks for listening.
Pleasure. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Bye.